Alrighty. Welcome, everybody. I am Alan, and I thank you for joining me. So, we are about to embark on a journey into A Course in Miracles. A couple of logistical things for our time together. One is, if you please keep your video camera turned off, we'll eliminate distractions. Also, if you want to ask a question or make a comment, type it in. At the bottom of your screen, there's a chat. And then click on chat and chat to ACP office. That's D. And she will collect the questions or comments during the meeting. And then toward the end of the meeting, she'll pass them along to me verbally. And then we'll dig into it. Okay? So, thank you for joining. Let's start with a moment of prayer and attention. And then we will dive in. So, let's take a breath together. Thank you, Great Spirit, for bringing us together. We share a holy purpose. Each of us has been guided here today for a reason, whether you're watching live or to our recording. And we know that there's something here for everybody, that there's a miracle here for everybody. And so we turn this meeting and all of our meetings over to Great Spirit. And we say that there is a mind and a heart and a truth that transcends our individual differences. And we ask that each person who's attending be blessed. We ask that something happen in your heart that moves you. We ask that some opening happens for you. And we call upon your individual angels, your guides, your higher power, whatever you want to call it, to really speak to you and plant some seeds that make your life better. All we're looking for here is ease and relief and release from fear. We open our hearts now to greater love, to greater healing, to greater expression. And we see wonderful, wonderful things coming from this for everybody who attends. And we say together out loud, if you would, wherever you are, and so it is. And so it is. Okay, so this is the first of approximately 20 months of meetings we're going to do. I've been a Course in Miracles student for many years, and I'm embarrassed to say that I'm still learning it. I guess we're all still learning it, but I still have a lot of learning to do. And, you know, it's changed my life. There's been nothing like it in my life. I've seen many, many spiritual teachings, and there's something about the Course that speaks to me at a very deep level. I think it's a very amazing, overarching umbrella system of healing. And to the extent that I practice it, it works. If I don't practice, it doesn't work. But we're going to practice it together. So what we're going to do today is I'm going to give you a very brief background, a setup on how the Course came. I know some of you are familiar with it, but in case you're not, it'll be interesting. And if you are already, I think it might give you might fill in some blanks and make it even more interesting. And I have a bit of a PowerPoint here, and there's something kind of goofy with it where it's not showing the slideshow, but it is showing parts of it. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to let you see the back end of PowerPoint, if you don't mind. That's the way it's the only way it's working. And so just focus on the main slide and don't look to the ones at the left. They'll just come up in a natural way. Okay, so Course in Miracles started early in the 1960s. This is Columbia Columbia University, where two professors named Bill Thetford and Helen Schucman were teaching at the College of Physicians and Surgeons. They were both full clinical psychologists and research psychologists. Now, Helen was a very interesting woman. She was Jewish by culture. She was agnostic or atheist by philosophy. And she was kind of a cynical, hard-boiled kind of lady, but she had a good heart simultaneously, but she was kind of a tough cookie in many ways. She was skeptical of spiritual things, even though she had had a number of spiritual experiences in her life. She had visions, and she was actually quite psychic, but she had this dual energy going where part of her was really open to this and part of it was resistant to it. It's a very interesting combination. Well, one day, Helen heard a voice, and it said, "This is A Course in Miracles. Please take notes." And the voice identified itself as that of Jesus Christ. Well, what does a Jewish, hard-boiled atheist clinical psychologist say to that? She was puzzled and upset and fearful. And so Helen went to her associate, actually her assistant, Dr. Bill Thetford, and she said, "Bill, I'm hearing a voice," which was really quite challenging for her to say. And because, you know, they participated in people who were locked up for hearing voices. And he said, "What does it say, Helen?" And she said, "This is the Course in Miracles. Please take notes. What do you think I should do?" And Bill said, "Well, why don't you take notes?" So she started to take notes. And there Helen and Bill together, they were dear friends. They came to be dear friends. In fact, there was a preamble to this that I must say, that at some point in their careers, they were very antagonistic toward each other, that they were not getting along and they were embroiled in academia and competition and backbiting. And one day, Bill came to Helen and he said, "Helen, you know, there has to be a better way. We can't go on like this." She said, "Okay." And the Course in Miracles scholars cite that moment that they chose to join instead of compete as the seminal moment where the Course in Miracles began to come. And it was shortly after that that this voice of Jesus began to speak to her. And so Helen told Bill what she was writing or hearing, and he said, "This is fantastic. Why don't you take notes?" So she had a steno pad and she had her own version of shorthand, and she began to take dictation from this voice. And she did not judge it, she resisted it, but she had to surrender to it because it was overpowering. And so basically, she would take notes at home in her steno pad. She would bring them into the office in the morning. They would go into Bill's office, they would pull down the shades, they would lock the door, and Bill was a typist. And so Bill would type in what Helen was dictating from her notepads. Well, this went on for quite a while. This actually went on for 7 years until eventually the entire Course in Miracles came. Now, at some point, they enrolled their associate, Dr. Kenneth Wapnick, who was kind of a mystical psychologist. He was interested in Christianity. And he helped them edit it. He helped them clean it up because there was some material at the beginning that related to Helen and Bill personally that was unrelated to the public at large. Then they met Judy Scutch, who was a metaphysical teacher, and she recognized the value of the Course, and she enrolled several other people. That's her husband, Robert at the time, Bill, Kenneth, and Helen. And they decided to publish the Course in Miracles. And they enrolled also Jerry Jampolsky, who's now a well-known teacher. And in 1976, this first edition of A Course in Miracles came. It was actually in Xerox manuscripts, and it eventually became 3 books, which is how I found it. And since that time, it's gained tremendous popularity. Millions of people have purchased it, and it's in many, many languages. I think it's in 26 or so languages at this point. So my history with the Course is interesting. When I first heard about it, I was rather skeptical because, I was kind of turned off to psychic mumbo jumbo, and I thought A Course in Miracles meant you wave your hand, or you read minds, or you do kind of stage and parlor kind of tricks. So I resisted it until one day I saw an article in Psychology Today magazine, and it was about the Course, and it showed a man walking along the street with these 3 golden books floating to him out of heaven. And I thought, boy, that's hokey. But then I began to read about it in this magazine article in Psychology Today. And something about it spoke to me. I thought, man, this sounds good. It's not what I thought it was. So I sent away for the 3 books. At that time, it was $40 for 3 books, which in 1981 was a lot of money for me. I was only paying $150 a month rent. But it was a big stretch financially and energetically, but I thought, let me do this. And I never forget the day. It was a winter night. It was December. And these 3 books arrived in this cardboard box. And I took them up to my room in the attic. And I opened it up. And I opened the first page of the text, the introduction. And something jumped out at me. It was like you know how in Batman you see the guy would go bam and go pow? Well, I just felt like something spoke to me at a very, very deep level. And it said, this is truth. And this could change your life. And this works. So whatever you think about it, whatever your preconceptions are, forget it. Just do it. And so I began to study A Course in Miracles. I began to do 1 day at a time for 365 days. And very interestingly, it was at that time that I began to write my first book, The Dragon Doesn't Live Here Anymore. It's like 1980. And I did the course and wrote my book simultaneously. And a lot of the course kind of by osmosis spilled into my writing. And if you remember that book, there are a number of channel messages from angels or higher power that was directly influenced by the Course. So there's an interesting evolution for me. And I'm doing the Course ever since, not every year, but many years I've gone through it. And I have to say it's endless in its depth. That the more I do it, the more I realize the substance it has. And the more I see it changes lives, including mine. And I've seen some people who've had miraculous transformations from doing the Course. Which brings us almost up to date. A few years ago, I had heard so many stories from people who had started the Course and couldn't stay with it, or put the book aside and picked it up many years later, that I thought, you know, wouldn't it be nice if I could somehow bring this down to earth so more people could understand? Because it's kind of esoteric and it's mystical and there's a lot of metaphysical language. And I thought, let me see if I can bring this down to earth. I would hear stories like, I purchased the book and I put it on the shelf, and then a while later I picked it up and the receipt fell out, and I realized it had been sitting on my shelf for 10 years. And I heard stories about resistance to the Course. I went to visit the original published printer of the Course, and he had Course in Miracles boxes up to the ceiling. And he said, I just got a letter from a guy from Australia who said, you know, let me tell you how long it takes to tear up A Course in Miracles and throw it into the ocean. And the printer said, yeah, a month later, I got another letter saying, would you please send me another course? So what happens is most people have some or a lot of resistance to the Course. And in fact, the whole first section of the course, of the workbook, is geared to bring up all the belief systems that are working against healing in your life, and demonstrate to you that the world you're living in is not the world you were born to live in, that we've created a whole story about what the world is that has nothing to do with truth. So the whole first part of the Course is about breaking down the old belief system that fights healing, Strange as it sounds, there is a part of us that fights healing. I think you're probably aware of that if you've done any of the course. So I wrote this book called A Course in Miracles Made Easy. And the idea is that it brings the course down to earth and makes it palatable and practical and doable for people who think the course is too out there. And so what we're going to do for this week and for the next month and the months that follow is go through one chapter per month and talk about how to apply it. So our first chapter is called The Only Choice That Matters. And so this really lays out the basic, fundamental, simple underlying philosophy of the Course. The Course in Miracles, let me tell you a story first, and then we'll go into the philosophy. So I had a friend, his name was Cliff Klein. He was a real Brooklyn guy, Jewish Brooklyn guy, real sweet guy. And he found A Course in Miracles. And he began to practice it. And you know, a lot of people get into the Course at a very intellectual level, but he did it from the heart. He wanted it to go deep. And he told me one day, he said, I was sitting in my living room, my Brooklyn apartment, and I heard a noise in the bedroom. And I got up, and there was a guy breaking into my bedroom and robbed me. And so I got up and I went to greet him, and he started to run. And I said, wait, you don't have to run. I'll help you if I can. You don't have to steal from me. And I invited the guy in, and we had some coffee. I said, what's going on in your life? He said, well, my girlfriend left me and been taking some drugs and lost my job and my life sucks. Cliff said, let me help you. So he just gave of his heart and talked to him, and he had a nice conversation with the guy, and he gave the guy some money, and he said, okay, come back if I can help you again. And when I heard that story, for the first time, I understood A Course in Miracles. Because A Course in Miracles says that there are only two belief systems. There are only two experiences that a human being can have. One proceeds from love, and one proceeds from fear. And every thought we think, every word we speak, every action we take proceeds from love or fear. And all of the human emotions are variations or subsets of each of these two themes. So the variations on love are joy and connection, and creativity and passion and aliveness and celebration and appreciation and self-expression. Those all come from love, and those all feel good. Fear has many derivatives as well. There's anger. Anger is just fear under pressure. There's shame. There's guilt. There's resentment. There's jealousy, envy, depression, on and on and on. So every possible human emotion comes from one or the other. And A Course in Miracles tells us very clearly that our natural state is love. That we were born in love, as love, and to love. And that's why loving feels so good. When you're in love, you feel the best in your life. Now, most of us equate love only with romantic love, and that's a taste of it. But you know, when you're in love, you're not worried about anything, and you're not looking at the clock, and you're not mad at anybody. You have all kinds of space, and you have patience. Hey, I'm in love, man. Things are cool. Because in that moment, you're in your natural state. And when you're in a natural state, things feel good and life works. When you're in fear, or any form of fear, you don't feel so good. You feel contracted, and you feel separate, and you feel alone. and you feel lost and you feel abandoned. So the Course is telling us that every moment we're in one world or the other. In fact, it tells us that there are two worlds, basically. There's the world that God created, which is pure love and all of its derivatives. And there's the world that the ego created. Now let's get into what the ego is according to the Course. The ego is basically a very limited, small, confining idea about who we are. It's basically a body identification. And because bodies are separate, we feel separate from each other. Because bodies live and die, we feel like we're vulnerable to death. Because bodies are limited, we feel limited. And so there's this whole world of ego that has replaced, for most of us, the world of God. Now, the world of God did not go anywhere. I promise you, it's still quite intact. However, if we focus on ego thoughts, on separate thoughts, on loneliness thoughts, on resistance thoughts, we can overlay this magnificent world of God, and we can be quite oblivious to the world of God. I mean, you can have a beautiful scene out there, but if you close your eyes to it, you're not going to see it. So the Course says that the world that God created is the real world, and everything associated with God is real. And the world that fear or ego created is the unreal world. And unfortunately, most of us live in the unreal world most of the time. In fact, the Course tells us that the world the ego created is the precise inverse and opposite of the real world. And so it tells us if you want to know what's real, if you want to come home to God, what you have to do is pretty much reverse everything you've been taught. And that's why the first 30 or so lessons of the Course are about reversing most or all of what we've been taught. My teacher used to say, when someone is born, people rejoice and the angels cry. When somebody leaves this world, people cry and the angels rejoice, indicating that the world is topsy-turvy. I mean, look at the sun and the earth. It would certainly appear that the sun revolves around the earth. I mean, until 500 years ago, that's the way people believed it was. But further investigation shows that the earth really revolves around the sun. So the Course tells us time and time and time again not to be fooled by appearances. And the voice of fear creates all kinds of stories and all kinds of appearances that distract us. So what the Course in Miracles wants to do, and it will do if we let it, is the Course wants to take us out of the world of ego, dislodge us from nightmares, and bring us back home to truth, that we are loved, that we are whole, that we don't really die, that nothing that fear tells us is true. Sometimes I listen to a Christian radio station. I like some of the music. And there's this wonderful song called "Fear is the Liar." Fear is the liar. And so lately, when I start to feel any fear, I remind myself, fear is the liar. So if I'm afraid, and please hear this, this is really key to the course. If I'm afraid of anything, for any reason, I must be believing in some lie. And if that's so, then there must be a truth behind it that I'm overlooking. So let me peel away the lie so I can find the truth and be healed. And so the Course doesn't want us to gloss over our fears or our ego. It wants us to look at them head on so we can dissolve them. It says you do not need to seek for love because love is what you are. It says what you really need to seek for is everything unlike love so you can recognize its falsehood and peel it away. Just to remind you, if you weren't on at the beginning of our webinar, if you have a question or a comment, you can type it into ACP office. Dee is there. She'll be collecting them, and toward the end of the program, we will have some Q&A. Well, let me post a couple of quotes. So once again, I apologize. My PowerPoint is not working super well, but so you'll see some of the back end of it. So we talked about the fact that most people have resistance to the Course. So just look at the main thing, not the stuff on the left. So this is probably one of my favorite passages from the Course. And it says, when you have learned how to decide with God, all decisions become as right and as easy as breathing. There is no effort, and you will be led as gently as if you were being carried down a quiet lane in summer. So what this is saying is that struggle is not a requirement of life, even though we all struggle at one time or another. It says that struggle is not of God. And it says, if you can just drop into ease and breathe a little bit and take the path that doesn't require struggle, you will be led as gently as if you're being carried down a quiet lane in summer. And this is what I say to people who resist the Course. I said, you know, the Course does not require resistance, it just requires trust. And later on in the Course it says, trust would settle every problem now. We'll come back to that. Fear of love, that's it. So there's a technique I give my coach trainees, and of course I use it with my clients as well. So one way to identify the difference between fear and love is to identify the voice that is speaking to you at any given moment. So I promise you that if you have a difficult decision or a relationship challenge or a financial issue or a struggle or conflict of any kind, anything that is unsettling. You know, the Course is really pretty, it's tight. It's absolute. It says you can't have a little bit of hell in heaven and you can't have a little bit of heaven and hell. Meaning that if you were born to live in love and you were born to be happy, then any form of fear or unhappiness is basically a non sequitur. It does belong there. So it says we accept, this is my statement, what's outrageous is not what you ask for. What's outrageous is what you settle for. So we've all been settling for a lot less than love in many ways. So this technique I use, and let's play this now just together. Let's do a small exercise together. So I'd like you to think of something that's troubling you. Just bring to mind one issue. It could be a relationship issue, a financial issue, a health issue, a spiritual path issue, a living situation, a political issue. Think of something that's troubling you. And if it's troubling you, then I guarantee you that on some level, the voice of fear is speaking to you. So what does the voice of fear or mistrust say about this situation? Let's take a political situation. The country's going to hell. Politicians are crazy. Crazy people are running the show. We have a lot of unconscious people in the country who are making decisions that affect me and hurt me. Let's take something more personal. My partner didn't acknowledge me. My partner doesn't listen to me. My partner looked at somebody else. I feel jealous. So take a moment to identify what your voice of fear is saying to you. And be specific. And the interesting thing about the voice of fear, please keep thinking as I'm speaking, is that it usually goes to the catastrophic fantasy. One of my clients said, a lovely woman with a few children, single mother, and she said, you know, every time I drive under that bridge by the freeway, I think, if things go bad for me and my kids, where could we put our cardboard boxes if we had to live under the freeway? And they were laughing about it, and she laughed about it too, and she told me, but when that voice speaks to you, it's not funny, it's scary. What if I can't support my kids? What if I lose my money? What if I lose my house? What if I became homeless? What if I had to live under the bridge by the freeway? You know, it sounds crazy, doesn't it? It is crazy. But the voice of fear usually goes to the catastrophic fantasy. And what we want to do as students of the course is we want to identify that voice early in the game before it sinks its roots in and monopolizes our consciousness. So we don't want to just gloss it over. We want to say, oh, that's the craziest thing I ever heard. You think I'm going to live under a freeway? I doubt it. Okay, so let's flip it now. Simultaneously, there's another voice. Voice for love. Voice for trust. The voice for self-forgiveness. The voice for compassion. The voice for kindness. The voice for hope. Well, what does it say about politics? Well, there may be crazy things going on, but you know, maybe all this darkness has to come up so it can get healed. Maybe what's going on in our country is forcing everybody to dig in deeply to see what they really believe and make a stand for what they believe. Maybe even though darkness seems to rule for a moment, eventually light will triumph. Maybe truth is always greater than illusion. Maybe love is always more powerful than fear. Maybe fear seems to have its day, but ultimately it must diminish and disappear in the face of love. Does that feel better? Yeah, sure does. Maybe my partner really loves me and my fear is making up stories about how he or she might not. Maybe looking at somebody else might force me to look at my own insecurities and dig into the place where I know that I'm wonderful and beautiful and lovable and deserving of a great relationship. Maybe I'm whole and magnificent and attractive, whether my partner pays attention to me or not. Maybe here's my chance to claim my sovereign beauty and walk ahead with my partner on my side without me needing a certain level of validation from my partner. Maybe my partner is a teacher who's helping me heal my fears and stand in my greater truth. Wow, I never thought of it like that. That sure feels a lot better. Maybe I'll love myself infinitely, no matter whether my partner seems to love me a lot or not. Wow. Maybe I don't need that person's love. Maybe I just need my love. Maybe I just need God's love. Maybe I have all the love I'll ever need. Maybe I'm okay. Wow, that feels a lot better, doesn't it? And maybe I'm not going to end up living under a bridge by the freeway. Maybe, you know, I'm so far so good. I've had my divorce and I'm raising my kids. And here we are. Somehow we're taken care of. Somehow I'm supported by the universe. I see no sign whatsoever that I'm going to lose it all. So why would I be afraid of that? I have two beautiful children, and we eat well, and they have a nice school, and I love them, and I have a passion for my career and my friendships. I'm doing pretty well. Why would I even think I'd end up under that bridge? I'm doing okay. So you see, when you hold both voices up, so then in coaching, I would say to the client, now which voice feels better? Well, duh. Which one has more substance reality? Well, certainly the voice of love. So you can play this game with yourself all day long, and anytime you feel any kind of upset, try it on for size. What is love saying? What does fear say? Which feels better? Which would I choose? And here's the second part of it. Which would I prefer to act on? Because what you act on indicates what you believe and where you're headed. So even though the voice of fear is speaking, I will act on the voice of love. You can go if you want, voice of fear, but it's not going to stop me from moving ahead. My teacher used to say the dogs bark and the caravan moves on. Of course, it says there are two teachers only who point in different ways. And you go along the way your chosen teacher leads. There are but two directions you can take while time remains and choice is meaningful. For never will another road be made except the way to heaven. But you choose whether to go toward heaven or away to nowhere. There's nothing else to choose, the only choice that matters. And of course, it says elsewhere, how simple is the choice between two things so clearly unalike. Wow. Can we just stop for a moment and pause to realize how unalike the worlds of fear and love are? They're universes apart. They have no overlap. There's absolutely nothing in common between the ego's world and God's world, between the real world and the illusory world, between the worlds of fear and love. And at every moment, you're choosing which one you're going to stand in. Now, you can certainly toggle back and forth 1,000 times a day. Most of us do. But what the Course wants us to do is to consciously practice choosing love more and more and more until the love vibration becomes our dominant energy. And we end up living more and more and more in love. And fear loses its icy grip over us. It cannot stop us anymore. It can't scare us. It may scare us, but we keep walking and we realize that there's another wonderful line from the Course that says, if you knew who walks beside you on the path that you have chosen, fear would be impossible. Let me say that again. If you knew who walks beside you on the path that you had chosen, fear would be impossible. How comforting is this to know that we're not alone? That wherever we stand, God is. Wherever we are, love is available. And we're only one thought away from peace. One of my favorite lines from the Course is, I think I might have even have posted here. Let me just go back to PowerPoint for a moment. It says, I could see peace instead of this. It's the title of Workbook Lesson 34. I could see peace instead of this. So let's go back to that thing that was troubling you, the issue that I asked you to call forth a little while ago. So let's just say to ourselves, please say it out loud if possible, if not, just think it. Okay, I have this apparently scary situation in front of me. At this moment, I could choose peace instead. At this moment, not tomorrow, not after I master the Course in Lessons, not at the Course in Miracles, not after I do 365 lessons, but at this very moment, I could step into peace. I'm only one thought away from peace. So let me renounce that thought that is keeping me from peace, and let me step into peace. Wow. So please, friends, would you try this with me? Just for a moment, just for a nanosecond. Imagine what it would be like to be at peace instead of this. Like, oh, just for a moment, like, oh, this does not have to be a problem. I guess that's another way of saying, this does not have to be a problem. Problem is a result of interpretation. Facts are neutral. Situations are neutral. The world is neutral. There's nothing good or bad about anything. However, the interpretation I make determines where I'll end up. So I made up a story that this is a problem. Would I be willing to relinquish that story? Maybe it's just an opportunity. Maybe it's an interesting lesson. Maybe it's a fun adventure. Maybe it's a gift. Maybe it's a blessing. Maybe there's something around the corner that's going to be so much better than I thought. So what if this were not a problem? Later on, the Course says in one of the lessons, fear is not justified in any form. I mean, the Course is absolute. It takes no prisoners. It doesn't compromise for one iota. That's one of the cool things about the Course. It says fear is never justified in any form. It doesn't say fear is justified here, but not there. Yeah, you should be afraid of your body, but not about politics. You should be afraid about your relationship, but not about your money. It says no. Fear is not justified in any form. And any form that you make an exception for, you step back into the world of fear. Another lesson, it says, I'm at home. Fear is the stranger here. Oh, don't you love that? I am at home. Fear is the stranger here. Now, none of you who are watching would ever let some nasty, dark, foul character into your living room. Let's say some really villain, creepy-looking guy came and said, can I come in? Well, hardly anybody would let that person in. But the Course is saying that we have let the creepiest of characters into our living room, into our heart, and fear. That icy, once in a while I've had a nightmare where I just get, just like the scariest thing. You wake up and you're cold and shivering. Well, that's what fear is. You let this nasty, smelly, evil character into your living room. You say, well, sit down, take over my house, run my house. dump crap all over the place, blow the place up, burn the place, do whatever you want. My house has just become your house. I'm dramatizing, but the Course dramatizes as well. It says, you have led a foreigner, you have led an alien, and I don't mean a Mexican, I mean you have led a foreigner, somebody who's foreign to who you really are. You've led a monster that doesn't match you into your heart, into your life. Now what are you going to do? It says, I'm at home. Fear is a stranger. You think that fear is real and love is a stranger. People say, wow, that's too good to be true. But what I say is it's good enough to be true. That when you let love in, then you're onto the real thing. When you let fear in, you're off the real thing. So, in just a moment, we're going to go to questions. Someone sent a question, which I'll answer briefly. This is actually related to a later lesson, of course, but she asked, what does it mean when the Course in Miracles says that the world is a dream? Well, that's pretty much what it means. It means that, you know how when you dream, anything can happen. You know, there's a monster, and then there's a lover, and then you're in a mountaintop, and then you're in a car, and then you're in a room, and you see somebody who died 20 years ago, and it's just everything just whips around with no reality or substance or connection or logic, really. And what the Course in Miracles is saying is that we're actually living a dream that seems real, but it's no more real than the dreams you dream at night. It says that people with small thinking have made up a small world, and we live in the world as if it's small when it's not. Now, this is nothing new. The Course in Miracles does not make this up. The Hindus have said for thousands of years that the world is Maya, or illusion. And the purpose of healing, the purpose of truth, is to break the illusion and return us back to who we are. In fact, Buddha had to confront Maya in order to be enlightened. He was sitting under the Bodhi tree and all the... There's a wonderful movie called Little Buddha, really well dramatized. And Buddha, yet to be enlightened, is sitting under the... He says, I'm going to sit here and I'm going to meditate until I'm enlightened. And when he makes that declaration, all these flaming arrows come at him, and thunderstorms and lightning bolts and monsters. And he says, this is illusion. I will not be moved by illusion. And he just keeps meditating. And as he holds firmly to the truth of his wholeness, all of those illusions dissipate, and the flaming arrows turn into flower petals that fall down around him and bless him. Watch that movie, Little Buddha. It's really, really well done. Really, really a great depiction of healing. So the person who asked the question, that's what it is. It's just, you know, you can live in a dream as if it's real, but it doesn't make it real. That's why the Course in Miracles lesson number one, principle number one, is that there's no order of difficulty in the miracles, because all illusions are equally false. It says that no illusion is more real than any other illusion. Either it's real or it's a lie. And if it's real, you stick with it. If it's a lie, you don't. Okay, well, let's play with some questions and comments now. Thank you all for joining me. This is fun. I hope you're enjoying it. I am. So my beloved Dee has been monitoring the chat, and she will pass along what she thinks are perhaps the most pertinent questions, and I'll deal with them for 5 or 10 minutes, and then we will end with a nice healing meditation. My beloved Dee, are you there?
Hello. I enjoyed your talk. That was a really good lecture, honey.
Well, thank you.
Lots of comments of appreciation, and many people feel emotional and teary at some of your words. So I just wanted to pass that along. Ruby asks, what is the purpose of fear? Does the Course explain why we have fear?
That's a great question, isn't it? No, I don't think the Course goes into that. The Course is very happy to just let you know it's not worth studying. In fact, it does go into that in some ways, where it says that you can get so involved in studying the ego and studying fear that you get way, 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 way into the labyrinth of studying all these reasons for fear and how fear works and how it expresses. And you can get sucked into the whole world of fear by studying fear. But Ken Wapnick once said, if you're in a burning house, you don't take time to go looking where the fire started. You get out. And so the Course, some forms of psychotherapy are absolutely obsessed with studying fear and ego. I mean, I had a friend who was a primal scream patient, and she would go into the box and scream her head off for years. And after 7 years, she went to her therapist. She said, well, I think I'm ready to leave now. I think I've done my work. He said, oh, no, you're just getting started. And I think Woody Allen said that when I first entered psychoanalysis, my biggest fear was that I would end up with the personality of a 19th century neurotic Jewish cocaine addict who smoked cigars all day long. He said, now, after 7 years in psychotherapy, I would have gladly settled for that. So the message here is that, my belief is that it comes with the body. My belief is that, when you start to identify with a body, then you take on all the vulnerability that a body takes on. And basically, the world of the ego is the world of the body for the most part. So that would be my simple answer. But in general, I think the Course would say, you don't really need to go there. I mean, spend your time studying where you want to go instead of where you want to get away from. And spend your time in your vision instead of in your history. That's my best take on that. Good question, though.
So Aliza says, if fear is not real, what if you think your intuition is telling you when your intuition is telling you not to do something? Is that fear or something else?
Great, fabulous question. There's a difference between intuition guided by truth and intuition guided by fear. And so it's very possible that your intuition could say, go here, don't go there, accept that invitation, don't accept that invitation, be with that person, don't be with that person. But it could actually just be pure guidance that you don't belong with that person. Now, if there's fear associated with a decision, you really need to look into it, because fear has polluted your process. But it's quite possible to be guided to things or away from things without any fear whatsoever entering. Good question.
Great. And then maybe this is a good one to end on. Someone asks if you were ever skeptical about all of this. And then someone else asks where to start if they're interested in the course. What would you recommend that how they start?
Well, was I ever skeptical about all this? I don't know what all this means. I've never really been skeptical about A Course in Miracles. I've had resistance to it, I guess you might say it's a form of skepticism. But, like everyone, I have my connected self and I have my disconnected self. We all have that. And so when I'm connected, there's no skepticism and no fear. When I'm disconnected, there's skepticism and fear. So, have I ever been skeptical? I've been fearful, but not skeptical. Let's put it that way. I mean, when I know what's true, I really know it. And when I don't know when I forget what's true, I really forget it. So it just depends on whether I'm on my right mind or my wrong mind. A Course in Miracles does talk about right mind and wrong mindedness. It says that when you're in your right minded, you're connected with love. And when you're wrong minded, you connect with fear. So, you can always gauge what mind you're in by how you're feeling and the results you are getting. Okay? And the other question was what? How do you start?
Yes, where to start if you're interested in the course?
Oh.
And then Oh, there was one more that was really good. Oh, does the course address manifestation?
Okay, we're going to start with a workbook. The text is very thick and it's very deep and it seems complex and it can be overwhelming. I know people who've read 10, 20 pages into text and they go, oh man, I'm never going to get this. Poof, that's the end of it. The workbook is designed to give you one lesson a day for 1 year. The first day is just a couple minutes and adds up after that. And the workbook is the simplest and easiest and most grounded of the 3 books. And it's designed to take you by the hand and lead you through the course's belief system with many, many practical lessons, practical applications, exercises, so you really get it. So I would start with a workbook and I would read the text and the manual for teachers as you went along. You can really do it anyway. That's just my preference. The workbook is the least scary because it accepts you where you are and it takes you by the hand step by step to where you want to be. So you will do it anyway, but that's what I would suggest. And the other
If people don't know about your book, Alan, maybe this is a good time to tell them about A Course in Miracles Made Easy before you address the manifestation question.
Yeah, all this is in my book, and there's actually a really good chapter called The Distractor Factor, where it talks about what happens when you hit resistance. It also tells you how to do the workbook and how to do all the books. So yeah, this is just a nutshell of what's in the book. Okay, what's the last piece?
Does the course address manifestation?
Not much. It addresses consciousness more than manifestation. In fact, I once did a workshop with Neil Donald Walsh, co-presented. And somebody asked Neil, can you help me manifest a car? And Neil answered quite astutely, this is not that kind of workshop. It says, this is a workshop about getting peace. And so there's 2 kinds of workshops. One is a workshop where you get stuff. Another is a workshop where you get happy. Now, if you believe that stuff will make you happy, well, maybe it will, but not in the long run. The workshop addresses your connection with spirit so you become so deeply connected that you absolutely recognize your abundance and your right to good. The Course says you deserve good health. The Course says you deserve good abundance. The Course says you deserve all the things you could possibly need for happy life. So in that sense, it addresses manifestation, saying that when you're in the right consciousness, everything you need will come. But you don't have to sit around and micromanage what's going to come, when, and how. You micromanage your consciousness. And when your consciousness is micromanaged, then all that you need shall be added. Jesus said, seek ye first the kingdom, and all shall be added. So did Jesus address manifestation? Well, sort of, but he addressed it from the inside out, not from the outside in. Hope that helps. Okay, well, we're coming up on an hour. Goodness, thank you so much for joining us. I want to close with a nice little prayer and visualization to kind of top it off. We'll be back next month. The dates are on the website where you found out about this. I sincerely appreciate you joining me. This is fun for me to do, and I hope you received. If you have any questions for next month, or you want to make any comments on this month, just email me at info@alancohen.com, and we'll read them and respond where we can. So let's close our eyes for one final minute here. We drop into our heart and we recognize that this is where we lived all along. That even though we have been exploring and searching and seeking, we've carried our heart with us. And we all know that the heart is where love lives. So at this moment, we give thanks that there is a path home. that God has not abandoned us, that the insanity of the world is not the ultimate truth. And so I speak for all of us when I say, guide me, Great Spirit. Help me keep choosing love more and more and more. Help me remember why I'm here. Help me create relationships that really work for everyone. Help me recognize that I deserve health and well-being and prosperity. And at this moment, I set my foot on the path of miracles. Thank you, God, for not abandoning me. Thank you for providing me with all the teachers and teachings and peers and materials that I need to come home. I am well on my way home, closer than I realized. I now stretch out my hand and I allow the Holy Spirit, the Great Spirit, to take my hand and take me exactly where I need to be to find the peace that my soul seeks. I know that this is so. I claim it. I believe it. I have it. If you care to say with me out loud, please. And so it is. Thank you so much for joining me. I love you all. I appreciate you all. I hope to see you again next month. Have a wonderful month. Every day filled with more and more love. And so it is.